Fempreneur True Confessions podcast.
Hi, everyone. Welcome and hope you're having a wonderful day. As you know, I'm Laura. I am the owner of a virtual assistant and project management agency. I help small business owners behind the scenes get stuff done. So,
Yep.
there's Oda.
And I'm Angelique with Lady Parkhouse Solutions. And we do project and event management for female entrepreneurs who are on fire out there, lighting up the world with their passion and their mission. And we help them achieve their mission in the most authentic way possible. And Laura and I do really similar things. And a little over 3 years ago, we decided to support each other and help each other in this entrepreneurial journey. And then we started the podcast, and it's been a blast. And we've had some fabulous guests.
Yes, it's been fun. I have loved how things have lined up. We talked about the podcast. We weren't quite sure what it was going to look like, and just it has become what it became all on its own. It was, we did kind of jump with not truly knowing what it was going to be like, and planning and those kinds of things, but still, it came out to be so much better than what we thought and where it's gone, and people have come in, and yeah, it's been so amazing.
Yeah. And each of our guests, it feels like the themes really kind of flow together really well for each guest. And today's guest is another one of those where we're on this theme of lately. It feels like imposter syndrome has been coming up. And we're all about authenticity. So authenticity and collaboration is like every episode, right? You're going to get that because that's our mission. But an abundance mindset, like those are the things. But lately it has felt like the imposter syndrome. And the other thing that's been coming up a lot is just a lot of like personal things that shape us, either before, during, or after this thing called Let Me Do Entrepreneurship. Yeah. And so that's what we're going to talk about today with Jennifer Regular.
Absolutely. So let's bring Jennifer up, and I'm going to introduce you. Jennifer Regular brings a fusion of spiritual insight, modern leadership principles, and compassionate guidance to individuals and organizations seeking to elevate and evolve towards greater purpose and impact. As a trusted authority in conscious leadership, Jennifer's insights and perspectives resonate with a global audience seeking holistic approaches to personal and professional growth. As a speaker, author, and podcaster, her ability to inspire and guide others through various mediums enhances her authority as a beacon of wisdom and inspiration. By advocating for a purpose-driven economy and nurturing authentic leadership, she contributes to the global movement towards positive change and sustainable growth. There we go.
Sustainable.
I was like, we're going to get there.
She did it. It's Monday.
Hello.
Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you so much. It's really fun to be here with you gals.
Yeah, and so you're an author, a speaker. You also have a podcast. I love that that we do have other podcasters on here. I think that is super fun, and we've gone on someone else's podcast as a team, right? Yeah. I've done other podcasts individually. Laura's done other podcasts individually, but we recently, late last year, wasn't it? Late last year we did one. Yeah, together, and the podcast was actually based out of the UK, and it was so much fun, and we've shared that on our social, so we'd love it if you go check it out. And Jennifer, what's the name of your podcast?
It's called Awaken and Ascend. It's a YouTube show, and it brings in global change makers, healers, and wellness advocates to share their messages, their journey, and provide some inspiration and insights to the audience, which is all about, gathering the courage to rise into our calling.
Wonderful. Yeah. And you shared your link to that podcast with us. Yeah,
I believe so. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what's the name of it again?
Awaken and Ascend on YouTube.
All right. I'm making a note of that because I want to make sure that we share that with our audience as well. So because our people are your people. Absolutely. Like we have a really similar target market for sure. But today we are here, and Jennifer has a powerful story, not too dissimilar from my own. I also left a abusive marriage. I also had to file bankruptcy. I also had to give up my home. I also had to give up my pets. We have like this similar journey. Um, Now, I was already freelancing. I've been freelancing since the 90s, not trying to age myself here, but since the like I didn't invent the internet, but I was one of the first people on it. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that way. My stepdad was an engineer in the Air Force, and so you better believe we had a Commodore 64. As
Oh,
soon
I
as
had
it
one of
came out,
those. Yeah.
kind of
In the
thing.
Big 20.
Right?
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. And my daughters to this day love the sound of, remember the sound that dial up internet
Oh
made?
yeah.
That's beep, all the sound. If they
Yeah.
hear that, they're like, oh, it's so soothing, because we remember hearing that. I'm calling myself out here. We remember hearing that at night, Mom, because after they would go to bed, I would log in and work.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And do other things like chat. Remember AOL chat room?
Right.
So, but this is like, it's funny because the first time they mentioned it's like, oh yeah, that's like, I remember that sound. It was very not comforting, but it was a signal to them that they were going to bed and it was time to sleep because Mom was getting online to do her
Yeah.
Yeah.
But all of that to say that I really feel like already we're kindred spirits. So I definitely want to give you plenty of time to dig into your story and tell and share it. And the reason we do these is not because like, oh, what, right? It's not about, oh, woe is me, or look how great I am because I survived this. But it's because there are other women out there struggling with the same thing right now. And so to hear another survivor's story, it helps them and encourages them to hear another entrepreneur's journey, that not only did I go through this and then now I have this. And another thing that I think is important, and I hope you will be able to share, is the amount of time it took to do all this, because none of this happens
No,
overnight.
that's for sure true. Yeah. Yeah, it's a complete transformation, essentially, is what's happening. And
Yeah.
it can feel very alarming, very disconcerting, and much like you don't recognize, who you've become in a way. And then at the same time, you don't quite feel like the person you were before either. So then there's this whole identity crisis, essentially, of, well, who am I now? Now what?
It's kind of like boiling a frog, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like boiling a frog. You don't take a frog and throw it in boiling hot water. It'll jump right back out.
Right.
And so the transformation takes place. You're in this place of discomfort and anxiety and pain, and that's what you know. That's the water you're in. Okay, you're the frog and you're in this water, and you start to make decisions that put you in different water, but it's a gradual thing over a longer period of time. Most of the time, the initial decision can feel really harsh, though, can it? Was that way for you?
The initial decision was very real. It felt grounded. It's like, okay, this is it. I'm done. I'm not going to do this anymore. This is enough. This isn't the way I want to live my life anymore. And then at the same time, it's like, well, how do I want to live my life? What does it mean now? Because now I've lost everything, essentially, right? Like you mentioned, the pets and claiming bankruptcy and my employment and my home and the garden and the dream, and
The dream,
everything
right?
we thought, it was going to be shattered. All like it was like
That's a good word for
an
it.
illusion.
That's how I felt the first time.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you become very disillusioned and you lose trust. Well, I can't say you because I don't know if it's true for you, but for me, it's like I lost trust in myself, my inner knowing. I lost trust in what I thought I knew, questioning that. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
self doubt, a lot of self worth issues came up. And interestingly enough, at that time, I was actually working at a women's shelter. And it was in the middle of the night. I was doing an overnight shift and I was reading one of the books that we offer the residents there. And I just had this sudden realization. I'm like, oh my gosh, is this happening to me? This is actually happening to me right now. And as a counselor in various forms at the time, too, I was always the go to person. And so there was a lot of shame that I carried about how did I let this happen to me? I should know better.
To me.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know all the resources. Like, I'm a very resourceful person. Like, I know how to deal with this. And who do I go to talk about this because of the shame and the pride and ego, all of that coming into play and not feeling connected with what it all meant. And I had a person that I worked with at Victim Services that said, you can be strong and vulnerable at the same time. I was like,
Mm.
wow,
Mm-hmm.
really? It kind of made me take a step back and see the bigger picture. And at that point is when I
Yeah.
started building my capacity to be strong and vulnerable at the same time, where I didn't have to live in that duality, of what was supposed to be
Yeah.
and how it was. And really coming out of my mind and into my heart and my soul and being led that way because my mind couldn't take me to where I needed to go. Right. In fact, our mind really
Right.
plays a lot of tricks. It wants to protect us. Our ego comes into play
Right.
and it kind of enforces like this mediocre life of keeping us small. And so I remember when I was lying in bed, for example, and just feeling completely depleted, emotionally exhausted, mentally drained, just staring up at the ceiling, not even able to move really, because I just didn't have any energy to do that. I couldn't picture anything for my life anymore. And as a visionary, not having a vision, it was like I didn't even exist anymore. And I was looking up and I was like, I felt like my life was over, but it wasn't the way that I wanted it to end. And with that, I like
Mm.
suddenly jolted up in bed. It was like this surge of energy, like an adrenaline rush. And it was like, where's my enthusiasm, my passion? My people used to call me Genergizer. Like, where's that life force and vitality, that I had, that I'm known for, that spark where I was unstoppable. And suddenly I was like completely shut down. And
Mm-hmm.
it came to me this realization of what passion really meant. And the information I received from that, from my guides at the time, was that when you break up the word passion, it's pass I on. Pass I on.
Mm. Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And you know that I is what we're here to pass on in this lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
It's who we truly are, it's what we truly came here to do. And I was like, that's still there. You just need to come into alignment with that I. You talked about, it takes a long time, the process, the healing, the transformation, all of that. And it does take some time. But what
Mm-hmm.
it truly boils down to, at least in my experience, is that you come into alignment. What it really takes is alignment, not time. It's actually alignment. And all of those things that I had lost was because I was not in alignment. It wasn't true for me. It wasn't meant for me,
Mm-hmm.
not for the long term, not for the long haul. It wasn't the end game. It was something I realized I had to move through to really discover more of who I was and who I came here to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Say that again for the ones in the back.
Yeah. Yeah. It really came down to alignment. And it wasn't, all of those things weren't meant for me, not for the long term. It was something that I had to move through and experience. It was like a rite of passage, you can say, or an initiation for discovering who I actually am and what I actually came here to do. I was on
Mhm.
the wrong track, maybe the right train, but the wrong track, wrong relationship.
Yeah.
However, I hesitate when I say that. I'm like, oh, wait a second, because it actually was the right relationship for that time. Our soulmates aren't
Mhm.
always the person that's our person forever. right? The person that
Yes.
loves
Yes.
and loves unconditionally and supports us. Our soulmates are also our adversaries, the ones that create the force of change that we need to
Mhm.
build up the
Yes.
courage, to build up our capacity, to be strong and vulnerable, to recognize what we're actually here to do, what kind of life
Mhm.
that we're actually creating, and have more choice with that. I kind of fell into marriage. I never actually grew up as a normal typical teenage girl who dreamed of a wedding and the house and wanted all those things.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I fell into it, because obviously I made choices, but it's like, how did I end up here? Like, this wasn't part of the plan at
Yeah.
all,
Mhm.
and so it's really, in hindsight, no surprise that it didn't work out, because that wasn't meant for me.
So how long were you
Makes
married?
I
total
was married
sense. Yes.
I realized that I'm really grateful that I got to realize, came to those realizations a year and a half into it. It was a 5-year relationship and a
Okay.
year and a half of marriage. Hmm.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Hmm.
And so I did, but no kids.
No kids, no,
Okay.
but two
So
beautiful golden retrievers that I grieved so much. Like, the heartache was almost
Yeah.
unbearable, to be honest.
yeah,
Yeah,
they're
I'm
like
more
our
of an
fur babies.
animal and nature
Yes.
person, and that loss was
Mhm.
significant for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and if you
Well,
were
that
a wedding and oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, go
I don't
ahead,
know if I
Laura.
was in delay. I'm sorry. But if you were a wedding kind of person, like that wasn't something you dreamed of as a kid and things like that, it does seem, funny because then you kind of you can start to see where the patterns were formed from maybe other people and stuff like that. I was not a wedding kid either. I didn't dream of a wedding.
Mhm.
I dreamed of
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
companion or somebody with me for a lifetime, but I didn't dream of a wedding, and we didn't have one. Like we're the most unromantic couple, I say all the time, but it works for us. Um, but it wasn't, friends, all that. I like, no, didn't have that in mind. So I love that, what you said, that in hindsight, it can definitely be like, oh, okay, I could see where that may have gone awry from the start, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, I'm going to kind of skip ahead here and ask a question
Mhm.
because I'm a little ADD and I don't want to forget to ask this question because I feel like it's important.
Mhm.
Now that you have gone through divorce, bankruptcy, the grieving, the loss of the pets, all
Mhm.
of the things, right? Would you do it again? Was it worth it?
I wouldn't do it again because I feel like it served its purpose. Was it worth it? Yes, absolutely. Hmm.
I guess my
It
question,
was, yeah.
somebody said this recently, is I wouldn't go back and change a thing.
Hmm.
I would still go through that pain in that relationship because it taught me such a valuable lesson and it
Hmm.
shaped who I am today. So I wouldn't go back
Absolutely.
and change it. But
Hmm.
I get what you're saying, like, oh, I don't want to do that again. Um,
Yeah.
but, and I think that's important for other women to hear as well that are about to jump out of this, what feels normal and comfortable, right? So
Hmm.
it's one of the things that's hard about the trauma bonding and the um, and and the first time I heard that term, I didn't Google it. Can't
Hmm.
go into it
Hmm.
here,
Hmm.
but there's actually chemical things going on inside your body because of what you've been
Hmm.
through any kind of abuse. That when you get out of that situation, your body craves that stimulus, for lack of a better
Hmm.
word, right?
Hmm.
That conflict or that abuse or whatever it is, because that's
Hmm.
Mhm.
normal. And
Yeah.
this calm, peaceful thing, this isn't what feels normal. What feels normal and comfortable is the chaos and the pain
Hmm.
and the
Hmm.
and
Mhm.
the trauma, right? But that doesn't
Mhm.
mean it's healthy or good for
Right.
you.
Hmm.
Um,
Right.
and sometimes I think that's the hardest part of this whole process is staying away or staying no contact and
Hmm.
sticking to your guns and following your gut and not giving in to the temptation to go back to what feels normal, because I did it. I did it repeatedly because I didn't understand trauma bonding. I didn't understand any of the actual chemical things that were going on inside my body that really drive how you act, and how you react. And I think it's just important for other people to hear. And I say women, but I think men should listen to our podcast, especially if your target market is women. Hello, look at all the insight you're getting here. Okay. But whatever kind of person you are, however you freaking identify, it's okay to feel that. It's okay to feel that. But do whatever you can to stay true to yourself and the decision that you've made, to follow a healthier path, because it is so worth it, even if it feels like hell right now. Would you agree, Jennifer?
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I heard about the impact emotionally, physically, and mentally from what you were saying. And I wonder if I can also offer a spiritual perspective to that. And
Absolutely.
in my past too, I spent many years working as a shamanic practitioner. And as that, we focus a lot on deep soul work, shadow work, and soul retrieval and soul remembrance and all of that. And a lot of issues in our lives come from some form of soul loss. And what I discovered along the way in my healing journey is that the reason why, well, there's two reasons why, two main reasons why, often too, from a spiritual perspective, that we keep going back or we stay in the situations that we're in, whether it's in like a romantic relationship or a job that's not serving us in that same way, that has the same kind of dynamics going on. You'll find this in different, we'll say, characters or people in your life around you, that you'll have your main characters and then the supporting roles for that program is about soul loss. So our soul becomes fragmented when we leak our energy or when we give away our power. And there's parts of our soul that get left behind in different places we've lived, in different places we've worked, in other relationships we've been in, and so on. And of course, our most significant ones that are partners in marriage, or that we spend 20, 30 years in a working relationship with, will have the strongest energetic connection. Attachment, right? And so it's not necessarily that job, that place, that person that we want to be with. It's that on a deep soul level, we're wanting to be with our soul parts. We're wanting to hold on to it, and that's the tie. And when we call that energy back home to ourselves, where we see a practitioner that can support us in that, whatever form that takes, like a coach, a therapist, or whatever kind of practitioner, even a close friend, a family member, then we start retrieving back that sense of wholeness and that sense of completion. And we're able to understand that we're not just trying to reach back out to that relationship. It's our soul part that is calling us back, that we feel fragmented to, and we want to remain whole. And that's the only way we can feel whole, we think, because of that fragmentation. And the other part that I want to mention is that also in integrated energy therapy, which is something I practiced for a number of years as well, there's 9 cellular memory areas of our body that correlate with specific emotions. And that's where some of the trauma bonding happens. But the point I want to make about it is our cellular memory holds imprints of everything we've ever experienced this lifetime and other lifetimes, and it leaves an imprint. The stronger the imprint, the stronger we're going to attract those same situations over and over again. We see this particularly with people who have experienced sexual abuse. Why they keep that pattern keeps happening over and over is absolutely nothing to do with you, and everything to do with the imprint on cellular memory, because everything's frequency and vibration that's attracting that over and over again. No matter what we do to try to resolve it mentally, physically, emotionally, we can't do that unless we're in our bodies and approach it from the soul level as well. So I just want to add that to what you were saying.
I love that.
Too,
No,
because,
thank you so much. Are you a Reiki practitioner as well?
I don't practice it. Yes, I am certified in Reiki and Reiki drumming. I don't practice that one as much. Reiki is really great when you're focused on physical situations. It does help mentally and emotionally and spiritually as well, but it's a lower vibrational energy that really penetrates once something manifests physically. And that's not really my work. I work more in the psycho spiritual level, so more the mental spiritual kind of work. And so when I'm talking myself as a spiritual wellness guy, that's the area that I focus on more. So I use more like integrated energy therapy or shamanic practice if that comes into play. But mostly it's through unconventional wisdom and insight these days, because just where I've evolved in my entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah. So I
Yeah,
worked
but
with
yeah,
a Reiki
yeah,
practitioner after my last divorce,
hmm,
and it helped immensely. And
yeah,
um, I highly recommend for anyone who is going through any. It really helped me. Um,
hmm,
and but everybody has their own uh, preferences, things that
yes,
like they need to heal. I do have a lot of physical issues, so not a lot, but
hmm,
at that time had some that
yeah,
were, and one of them was anxiety,
mm,
that was manifesting in my body. So,
hmm,
um, but one thing I wanted to ask you was, because I don't fully understand, and so I feel like, well, maybe our listeners don't either. When you say
mm,
shamanic practices, is that the right
hmm,
term?
hmm,
What does that mean? So give us a
yeah.
little bit of insight on that.
Sure. Well, it's a really big thing because there's so many different shamanic practices.
Yeah.
Some of the things that I worked with individually with people in the past, and actually sometimes in a group, is soul retrieval. So that's retrieving lost parts of ourselves. So I journey with the drum to where those parts are and bring them back, and then I restore them in the body. And then there's also soul remembrance, which helps us to remember what our soul's journey is and how we can best serve our soul's purpose in this lifetime. And there's power animal retrieval. So those are the three shamanic methods or practices that I engaged with the most. Power animal retrieval is calling back an animal actually that emanates the kind of traits and qualities that we once embodied and have somehow given away or lost, or it's been taken from us. And so we call that back in. And so, yeah, the
That's
three main ones.
that's really cool, because I was just in a local store yesterday exploring that new area I'm
Mm,
in, and a friend of mine took me in there, and they had these little stones with that said spirit animals on them, but they didn't have very many left. They had a horse,
mm.
which I definitely feel like
All
is
about power.
a spirit animal
Yeah, yeah.
for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then cats,
Mm-hmm.
and specifically cheetahs right now.
Ooh, okay.
But they also had buffaloes,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to remember what else they had. But I was like, I need to explore this a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually pulled a card uh, about 6, 7, 8 months ago, and it was a gods, goddesses, and something else. I
Mm-hmm.
can't remember what the third thing was, but it was goddess Epona, and she's with a
Oh,
horse,
yes.
and I was like, oh my gosh, that is so perfect.
Wow.
Um, and uh, and it really just, I say this because to encourage other people to be open to it, that it is like, because some people are like, spirit animals, power animals, what are you talking about, but for like us, who we are totally animal people, I have a cat now,
Mm.
Laura with the
Yeah.
dogs, and
Yeah, my dog.
everybody loves my cat. My Reiki practitioner came over to feed my cat a week or so ago. She's like, oh, she'd never met him before. She's like, oh my God, he's the best cat ever. And she's allergic.
Oh, wow.
And he's a complete
Mm.
rescue. And he's not without bad habits. He has bad habits, but he's such a lover.
Mhm.
And so he's really, really helped me in my healing
Mm.
and made me happy.
Mhm.
Oh,
You know,
oh, yeah.
like he just makes me happy.
Uh,
Yeah.
And I love him so much. I'm getting I'm getting kind of emotional now. So I just want people to know that, like it's a real thing. You can do it. Even if you feel disconnected now, you can still reconnect with that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely. And
Um,
Angelique, it's interesting you mentioned Epona and the horses, because this time last year I was working at Epona Rise Retreat Center and working with the owners there, and it's an equine facilitated educational and retreat center. And yeah, so and it was called Epona Rise Retreat Center. How beautiful is that? Yeah,
I
here in
am
British
gonna have
Columbia.
to. There is a reason
Yeah.
that I brought that up. So you could tell me about that. I believe in that for sure. All right. All right. So we've got a little bit of time left, and I definitely want you to get more into the overriding imposter syndrome
Okay.
and how did you come up with this? How did you hear about it? How did it come about? Tell us all the things within the next 20 minutes.
Okay. Oh
No
my
pressure.
goodness. Yeah. Well, this imposter syndrome, it's like a thing, but it's not really a thing. And that's why I talk about overriding imposter syndrome, because it's not an actual disease, right? It's not an actual syndrome.
Right.
But we come to know imposter syndrome as this thing that makes us seem like we're not who we think we are, or that we don't believe what other people
We
see
question it.
about us. There's a lot of questioning that goes on. And there's like, the who am I, that's always talked about with Nelson Mandela and Marianne Williamson, and, to do all these things. And then who am I not? Well, there's a lot of confusion around that, right? It's a lot of confusion because there's a lot of conditioning that came into play, a lot of programming about societal expectations and being a minority and all of the different ways that create barriers for us to really step into our spiritual sovereignty. So again, that we're here to pass on. And spiritual sovereignty is actually the antidote to imposter syndrome, by the way. So I'll just share that and I'll give it away right there. And the true imposter I discovered was shame. Not feeling like we live up to who we think we are, or not in the past, like we weren't fully living our potential and who we were really meant to be, because we were performing under what we were conforming to, because of parents, because of institutions, because of other authorities that we gave away power to, when really it all comes from inside, right? Restoring and becoming into alignment with our higher power to be able to serve a higher purpose. So it's not an ego-based pride, it's actually a spiritual pride of that we're here to pass on our core essence and being able to fulfill our mission in that. And I remember that when I had first started this venture of business of lighting the path, because I've had a few, I felt really good. I was confident. I was excited about attending this Collaborate event a couple of years ago. And I was all excited to, I prepared my pitch and what I was going to be sharing. And I was really excited about the services I was offering and meeting all of these amazing people. And then I started hearing about what other people were doing, the positions they had, stages they had been on, these really famous people like Wayne Dyer and so on that they, collaborated with and were on stages with. And I'm like, I was like a deer caught in the headlights. I'm like, what am I doing here? I'm just like starting out this new business again. And I was like, I don't know what to say. Like all of these lights shining on me, right? And I just froze. I'm like, and I actually at one point started crying because I was just so overwhelmed by all this excitement and then sudden nervousness and anxiety. And, come to learn that nervousness and excitement are the same part of the brain. It's just how we interpret it. And so I was a hot mess, you can say, right? I was like, I wanted to be there, but I didn't think I really belonged there. And like, I don't know what to share with these people. Like, I didn't feel like I belonged there, But
And it
then,
sounds
yeah,
like it stemmed out of comparison.
right. Exactly. Exactly.
You were okay until you started comparing yourself
Exactly.
to
That's
others.
right. That's right.
people.
Mhm.
Like, oh, I'm so
How am I
excited.
going to live
And
up
then
to
you're like,
that, you know?
Right.
To be
Right.
yeah.
worthy enough to be hanging out with these people, right? Like,
And who placed that expectation?
right?
We do it to ourselves.
Yeah.
Nobody is over there going, oh, look at that
And you know
person.
what,
You did
Angeli? They
this.
didn't treat me any different than
Mm.
anyone else. You
Yes.
know, they didn't think
Thank you.
lowly of me. They didn't judge me. They didn't do any of the things that I was doing to myself, you know? And
Mhm.
so I went out on break.
Mhm.
I regrouped. I cried. And then I'm like, okay, I gave myself a little pep talk and then I re entered, you know? And
Mhm.
and that's the thing. It takes courage to show up and to keep showing up. And you know,
Yes.
that
Oh,
wellness journey is all about that sustainable growth that you mentioned earlier, Laura, when you're reading the bio. It's that sustainable impact. How do we build that momentum, get it going in the first place, and then how do
Mhm.
we sustain that? How do we keep our spirit intact so we
Mhm.
don't like lose everything again, including our self-esteem and self-worth, right? Our purpose and meaning of life, and whatever it might be,
Mhm.
the things that really matter, not just the material stuff, you know, the money and the home and all of that, but the
Mhm.
actual values that we can
Mhm.
stay aligned with and live more from that space than rather than expectations, obligations, or fear, to really transform that fear into
Mhm.
freedom, freeing
Yeah.
ourselves from emotional attachments, freeing ourselves to live the life we came here to live, despite what other people might be
Oh,
doing to try to throw us off track from that.
Mhm.
I love what you say about the emotional attachment because
Mhm.
I don't feel like men struggle with that as much as women professionally.
Mm-hmm.
That we do make emotional attachment, not just in our career, but also in a lot of
Mm-hmm.
things. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
things. We create an emotional attachment.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I've really been learning to practice is this detachment, but not in a bad
Mm-hmm.
way, like not like disassociating a detachment, but a detachment from the outcome. It's not about the outcome. It's about how do I get there and how do I feel getting there.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's there, and we're there, and what's next? Life goes
Mm-hmm.
on, even after the decision, the culmination of
Mm-hmm.
whatever is good or bad or indifferent. If you're not attached to it and you're actually enjoying the process, like win, win,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing I wanted to go back, and you mentioned you had several
Mm-hmm.
careers, and so our
Both
companies,
are
right?
true. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, right,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
same. And I think that, it's a lot of, I've heard a lot of our guests as well as other entrepreneurs that I've talked to. It's like, I'm not sure what I want to do. I started out wanting to do this, but now I don't feel like that is in alignment with me because I've changed and I've grown and I've all these things and I don't feel like it
Right.
aligns. And um, if
It feels different because we're operating from a different frequency, right? And we
Mhm.
discover more of who we are and we step into that, we embody that. And then
Mhm.
we need something different, the other conditions that help us thrive and to be in alignment. And
Yeah.
that's when things change. That's when things are constantly transforming and evolving. We personally develop and grow. And I'm all about personal development work. So I'm really lean into that inner work. And it's transforming from the inside out. And transformation, let's just look at that word for a minute. It's transcending form, right? Going
mm,
beyond the form relationships, jobs, work has taken in the past. And I think when we change jobs and careers or business ventures or whatever it might be, it's through that evolvement. It's through new alignments, new ways of being and living in the world, right? That's how we grow and evolve. And it's detaching from the role that we were playing before. It's just the attachment to the role, not who we are, right? Not questioning who
Yeah.
we
mm,
are per se and what we're meant to do, but just like that role doesn't really suit me anymore. You know, I'm gonna work on this script or
mhm,
this role now. You know, an actor's not,
yeah.
they get stereotyped, right, in a typical role when we think of, Hollywood,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
but you get to try out different roles and different parts of who you are and what capacity you
Mhm.
have to be able to be in that. So I always encourage people to step out of that role to role way of relating and being in the world into connecting soul to
Mhm.
soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny, there's like a
Sorry, I dropped off for a
oh,
second there.
you're good. Go ahead.
Um, the other question I have for you was from the time you made this life altering decision to leave your marriage
Mm-hmm. With the marriage, okay.
and
Mm-hmm.
then to where you are now and kind of the benchmarks marriage,
Oh,
started
sure.
my
Okay.
company, and here I am now. But
Yeah.
in between then and now, there were 4 different iterations of what I do now.
Yes. Okay. So I left my husband in 2006. So it's almost 20 years ago, which is crazy. And I feel like I've lived many lifetimes since then. So this is an interesting question. Like, how many life stages have I gone through? Quite a few, to be honest. So I left in 2006. I went on a healing journey for myself and the kind of modalities and things that supported me. I started sharing with others. So then I was in the healing arts. It was called, Spirit of Compassion, I think was the first one. And that was facilitating healing and self empowerment through inspiration, support, and spiritual wellness strategies. And then I went into Enlightened Wellness, was the umbrella term for the different transformational workshops I was doing. And alongside this, by the way, I was still working in social services, which was my career for over 20 years. So, working with all kinds of population, domestic violence, homelessness, addictions, mental health, federal offenders, all of it. Any kind of barrier that you can kind of come across that crushes our human spirit, I've worked with. And so, I've had a lot of exposure to what can hurt us
Yeah.
and what distorts or moves us away from our full potential and like I keep saying, who we came here to be and what we came here to do. And so that took so many different forms through that, the social services and then the healing journey and practicing the shamanic methods and the integrated energy therapy, Reiki drumming, and so on. And so I had a little healing center for a time doing all of that kind of work and group meditations. And then I'm also a teacher on Insight Timer. So I was doing,
Nice.
live events,
Mhm.
courses, and meditations and talks on that still for the last 7 or 8 years. And then, so I was really focused on the healing arts for quite a while because that's what I was moving through. And then as I came into more of my own empowerment, then I started focusing on more of offering that to people, facilitating authentic empowerment and embodying leadership, self leadership, and how we lead others. And it's interesting to look at the etymology of leader, which is lidere, which means to guide and bring forth. And so I
Right.
really love that.
Mhm.
Like a true leader is one who helps others lead others, right? It's not about
Mhm.
gathering
Yeah.
followers and becoming an authority or anything
Right.
like that. In fact, I find
Yeah.
that these days in this time of ascension that we are not so much about our individual missions anymore. It's really about the collective and our collective mission. So I really started getting more into collaborative work. So putting together the Wake Up and Change the World Global Summit, the podcast that we mentioned earlier, Awaken and Ascend, and just a lot of things where we're doing like joint series and workshops and retreats together and something like this, where the three of us are in conversation and sharing true confessions, right? And
Mhm.
all
Yes.
sorts of ways like that. And then even in September, you mentioned about being an author. About 2014 is when I self-published the book Embrace Your Power, a healing journal of self-discovery, and it was all about that, healing our relationship with ourselves. And there was prompts in there. It's a journaling style book. And then because that's again what I journey through, so it's transforming from the inside out, right? Bringing that out to who we're here to serve. And then just
Mhm.
last September in 2024, a collaborative book, where 22 of us soul professionals gathered together and wrote the ultimate guide to leading your legacy. And my
Mhm.
chapter 5 in that was about leading with passion. And passion, as I described it earlier, that we're here to pass on and lighting the path to profound impact and collective transformation. And this is my work now, is gotten to this point where I can come together with all of those people that I mentioned that I've met along the way, all those allies, and you know, all the things that we've done together, and we build a community around that. We get to support each other around
Yeah.
that. We uphold each other the sacred responsibility of what we came here to do. And so we look at our leadership archetype and how we can stay in alignment with that and continue to grow and develop and collaborate together. So this is where I am now. And all of it was just a period of evolution, and it continues to be that way, to move out of that comfort zone and into the growth zone. It takes courage, it takes trust. The last
Or how
19 years.
doing this.
Yeah.
So when did you or
The social work in 2015, so 10 years ago.
okay.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
10 years of basically, this is kind of like your little internship, right? You went through all
Yes.
these, learning all these healing modalities and practicing in them, applying them to yourself and to others for 10
Right.
years, a decade. And now
Yeah.
almost a decade of implementing it. That's fantastic. But the reason I
Yeah,
wanted
where
to
it's on
point
its
that out,
own.
was so other women or people
Yeah.
that are listening can be like, it didn't happen because it sounds, when we're talking about it right now, it sounds like, I went from 0 to 100 in 24 hours. No, this takes
No.
20 years of work and application. So don't feel like you're failing just because you just started and you're not here yet.
Yeah.
And because that's one thing that when Laura and I started the podcast, that's what we saw. We saw 0
Yeah.
to 100. We saw, this is how you hit 6 figures. I'm not at 5 yet. Come on, and so that's why I kind of wanted to point that out and make sure that we
Yeah.
capture that today.
And to add to that, Angelique, is that the first 9 years I was doing both my career
Right.
and my
Mhm.
business, right? So
Yeah.
it's not like one or the other. It can be both. You build your
Yes.
capacity to do the things that you love or that you're feeling called to do while you're still doing the old one, right? There's a whole transition and transformation that happens, that awareness, and then the rite of passage, and then this rebirth. And that rebirth period, from that moment of inception or conception of,
Mhm.
this new part of us that we want to reveal, comes into play. And that could take as long as it takes. For me, it was 9 years of that, and then the last 10 years on its own. And for other people, it might be different, but you kind of see that pattern. I know the two of you have interviewed many people that probably have similar stories. The guests on my podcast certainly have, no matter where they are in the world, which was interesting, because at a
Mhm.
soul level, that's what our journey's all about, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And you find people.
I'm going to switch it up just a little because you talked about a collaboration a lot and the collective, right? Us as a collective. And I love that because that's why we started the podcast. It wasn't
Yeah.
so that we could get on here every week and listen to each other talk. That's not the
Right.
point. The point was we've spent the last 2, almost 3 years investing our time because we wanted to create a community, a safe space, a container for women like us who are aligned and have, similar journeys to connect and collaborate and become a collective. And so
Yeah.
we are working in the process of creating a free membership for our listeners. It's called the Fempreneur Collaborative Network, and that is all we are going to do there is connect and collaborate and support each other. And we're super excited about it. So go out to ftcpodcast.com and get on the wait list, and you'll be the first to join. We will need beta testers, so everybody will get a special deal for that. Because there will be paid tiers as well, but the entry level is going to be free for listeners. And then the next thing is thank you, Jennifer, for being here, spending your time.
It's been an honor.
Today. I love everything that you've talked about today. Again, I think part of it is we had similar journeys and experiences, but that you've also dropped some real nuggets for me today. One of which was that the true imposter is shame, and that the antidote is spiritual sovereignty. And
Yes.
the passion, pass I on. Those are
Mhm.
things that definitely resonated for me today. So thank you.
Oh.
And then the other thing, if you're a past listener, you know we like the current guest to introduce next week's guest. We go live every Monday at 12 Eastern with a different guest to tell and share her story. And so next week's guest is Kate Mollison. And Jennifer, take it away.
All right. Yes, Kate Mollison is a certified, I'm going to take my glasses off to see this so I don't mess it up. Kate Mollison is a certified grief coach who uses a unique approach to promote awareness around the importance of grief. Using her own experiences as a window, Kate adds a personal touch to an otherwise isolating and difficult topic. She is the founder and CEO of On Tuesdays We Wear Black, a consulting company working as a grief and bereavement specialist, where she focuses on helping others understand the connection between grief and bereavement. Kate has several years' experience as a clinical case manager and as a certified playmaker. She uses a modality that helps people unlock joy and find peace and meaning again after loss. Kate is also actively working for legislative change surrounding bereavement leave laws and is the host of the National Grief Awareness Professional Development Conference. By educating both individuals and businesses about the importance of grief integration, she provides education that fosters visibility and grief inclusion. Gosh, she sounds amazing. You guys got to show up again next week to watch that.
Yes,
I
and
know I
she is
will.
amazing. I
Yeah.
remember our we do a meet and greet with referrals, and she was a referral, and she's a hoot. It's going to be so much fun.
Wow.
And she also has her own, I believe she has her own podcast because I remember her saying something and going, "Oh, I gotta go listen to this." So,
wow.
yes, come back next week and we'll get to talk to Kate and Jennifer. Thank you again. It's been fantastic talking with
You're
you
so welcome.
and hearing your story and all of the truth bombs that you dropped today. I can't wait for our video editor to get in there and pull out some real nuggets for us.
Thank you so much.
All right, guys. Well, we will see you next week at the same time, Mondays, 12 Eastern. Have a wonderful week.